The year is 2024, and the internet, ostensibly a bastion of democratized communication, finds itself in the midst of a tempest. At the eye of this storm is Matt Mullenweg, the co-founder of WordPress, a platform that powers 43% of the world's websites. That number is staggering, isn't it? Imagine nearly half the internet's real estate controlled by one platform, and by extension, one man.
The cool thing about it is the software is a community project. So you don't have to pay anyone to license it. It's kind of like the Wikipedia, where anyone can use it and anyone can edit it and improve it.
The figure is enough to make even the most hardened tech skeptic sit up and take notice. It began, as so many tech feuds do, with a keynote speech.
WP Engine. And who's the person behind all this? This guy. His name's Lee Whitlinger. And he's on the board of WP Engine. He owns WP Engine, actually, they control it. He's also on the board of another company that's here. I'm making the case for why this might be the last WordCamp you see WP Engine have a booth at.
WordCamp US 2024 was supposed to be a celebration, a gathering of the global WordPress community to share ideas, updates, and visions for the future. Instead, it became the stage for a blistering attack by Mullenweg on WP Engine, one of WordPress's largest hosting companies. The charge: exploitation.
You know, you can kind of see when there's like one person, one thing behind all of this. And it's just like a schoolyard bully. You know, I know this is spicy, this is a lot to call out, but unfortunately this has been going on since they bought WP Engine in 2018.
WP Engine is not WordPress, Mullenweg thundered, his tone leaving little room for ambiguity. They are a cancer to WordPress. The accusation was as bold as it was inflammatory. WP Engine, according to Mullenweg, was profiting from the WordPress ecosystem without pulling its weight.
Your primary business, I think, is WordPress.com, the web hosting service.
Yeah, that's about half of our revenue, which I think we publicly said is now over $500 million a year. And and it scales from, you can start with a free WordPress.com site or pay, $60 a year, all the way up to our VIP service, which is Enterprise, which hosts y'all, whitehouse.gov. We run some of the largest sites in the world. And now WordPress has grown from being, started just a blogging platform to running over 40% of all the websites on the internet, which is 10x the number 2.
While Automatic, Mullenweg's for-profit company, contributed thousands of hours each week to WordPress's development, WP Engine, he claimed, contributed a mere fraction.
A lot of people, when they hear WP Engine, they kind of expand the WP to WordPress, and they think it's us. They think it's an official thing. And actually, we worked pretty closely with them since they're starting. We're actually a seed investor. But in 2018, we were kicked out and they were bought by this private equity firm.
For context, WordPress is open source software, meaning it is free for anyone to use, modify, and build upon.
Yeah, we started in 2005. So we started basically trying to create a commercial side of WordPress. So we do hosting, anti-spam plugins, Jetpack, Akismet, etc. But really, we're an open source and open web company.
The code is maintained by a community of developers and funded through a mix of donations, sponsorships, and contributions from companies like Automatic. WP Engine, however, is a commercial entity. It provides hosting services tailored to WordPress users, earning millions in the process.
You were kicked out. So they bought your shares, but you sold them unwillingly?
Yeah, we would have loved to have remained involved, but Silver Lake kind of took it over. And like they've done with many open source and open companies, they've really taken it in a quite profit maximizing place. So they started to abuse the trademark a lot more. They started to really cut corners for the user experience. There's been reports around things they do with like turning off the revisions feature for WordPress, supports. And so they built quite a large business though. So private equity is usually good at operating. They're probably around 450, 500 million. We estimate they're doing 50, 60 in free cash flow.
Mullenweg's argument was that such companies have a moral obligation to reinvest in the ecosystem that sustains them. It's not enough to profit, he said. You have to give back.
Think about this. If you ran a business, normally you'd spend part of your budget on R&D. How great is it that if you could get all the software for free, don't spend a single dollar on it, or spend 40 hours a week, so call that, $100 grand a year on it, and you can make $450 million per year off it, that'd be pretty sweet, right? It's pretty good business. But then what happens to that software? If you're taking the business from companies like the other ones I mentioned, Automatic, Newfold, etc., that like actually put back to that software. Now those companies are fighting with like one hand tied behind their back. I've got 100 full-time people working on core and things in the commons. I could have those 100 people working on getting more customers for WordPress.com or something like that, but they're not. They're working on things that benefit all of us, that belong to all of us, that part of open source. So
WP Engine's CEO fired back almost immediately, branding the comments as defamatory and untrue. The company's official statement was measured, but the underlying sentiment was clear. Mullenweg had overstepped.
And by the way, I do also want to say, and I offer this, I told WP Engine, like, hey, all the employees there, like, again, many of them believe in this and agree with this. Please do not be mean to any of them, anything like that. This is coming from the very top. That's why I highlighted this Lee guy.
The tension escalated when WP Engine issued a cease and desist letter accusing Mullenweg of extortion. They claimed he had demanded a percentage of their revenue for the use of the WordPress name, a trademark owned by the WordPress Foundation. In response, Mullenweg doubled down. Within days, WordPress.org, the non-profit arm of the platform, restricted WP Engine's access to WordPress updates. This was no small move. WordPress updates are essential for maintaining site security and functionality. By cutting off WP Engine, Mullenweg effectively left their customers vulnerable to cyber attacks. The message was clear: play by my rules or face the consequences.
What was any of my business? What do you mean?
What WP Engine does, how it conducts its...
Oh, absolutely, because they were abusing the trademark and creating a lot of confusion in the market. So if you look actually, since this started, they've had, we estimate tens of thousands of customers leave, and including like, I had a friend of mine, Bob Perkowitz, who was in the CNBC article. He's a close personal friend. I've known him for 15 years. He had 8 sites on WP Engine. He thought it was me. So it wasn't until the story came out that he was like, oh, and so that was, he was one of the customers that has left.
Then came the seizure of the Advanced Custom Fields ACF plugin, a tool widely used by WP Engine customers.
And they refused to even negotiate the term sheet. It was 8%, but we would have negotiated that. And so, we declared this scorched earth nuclear approach where we said, all right, we've tried the nice way for a long time.
Officially, Mullenweg cited security concerns, but the timing was suspect. Critics accused him of using the plugin as leverage, a tactic more akin to corporate warfare than open source collaboration. WP Engine, for its part, characterized the move as an abuse of power.
I mean, the things they've done which are very misleading, they've tried to weaponize their customers against us to try to rile up the WordPress community. And 2, they've tried to say hey, this was a last minute thing. They also misled where they said that, some of the text messages they released, one part of how closely we were working with them is I was under the impression that Heather was actually interviewing for a job.
To understand the significance of these actions, one must grasp the philosophy underpinning open source software. At its core, open source is about trust. The community relies on a principle known as the benevolent dictator for life, BDFL, a term coined to describe leaders who hold ultimate authority over a project but are expected to act in the community's best interests.
Yeah, on Sunday afterwards, so I think this all started, September 17th, so September 20th. I did say that, hey, we were having these negotiations. What evidence do we? It was all verbal, she didn't put anything in writing, but we have these meetings, we have selfies together, I can show you that stuff, but it was a verbal negotiation. But we got to the point where I know exactly what she was making with WP Engine, I know what her equity is, all that sort of stuff.
Mullenweg has long been the BDFL of WordPress, a role he embraced with apparent relish. But recent events have prompted a fundamental question. Can a leader wield so much power and still be considered benevolent? Mullenweg insists his actions are necessary to protect WordPress. WordPress belongs to everyone, he wrote in a blog post following the controversy. But make no mistake, if you harm this project or its community, I will act to protect it.
For the past really 18 months, we've been trying to do a deal with them and worked very closely with their board member, Lee Whitlinger, Heather Bruner, the CEO of WP Engine, and really just try to do a deal for a long time. And it was really kind of the past 4 or 5 months that we realized they were just delaying.
His defenders argue that the stakes are too high for compromise. With 43% of the internet depending on WordPress, any threat to its stability is a threat to global communication itself. Yet, not everyone is convinced. Detractors point to the centralization of power within the WordPress ecosystem, where Mullenweg and Automattic wield disproportionate influence.
We talked about the slowing of the growth of WordPress, which we actually had for a few years. You can map that actually pretty well, and we've been trying to debug this. And part of my background is macroeconomics. You can actually map it pretty well to the revenue growth of a company like WP Engine.
The WordPress Foundation owns the WordPress trademark, but Automattic oversees key elements like WordPress.com, the hosted version of WordPress, and WooCommerce, its e-commerce platform. This blurring of lines between the open source project and its commercial counterpart has long been a source of tension. Critics argue that Mullenweg's dual roles as BDFL and Automattic's CEO create an inherent conflict of interest. WP Engine's legal team has seized upon this point in their lawsuit against Automattic.
One nice thing about this, hopefully, going to trials, there'll be a discovery process. So they've selectively released some of my text, none of hers, by the way, to sort of paint this picture.
The filing accuses Mullenweg of leveraging his position to stifle competition, a claim that, if proven, could have far-reaching implications. WP Engine reported significant losses following the dispute, including a 29% drop in new customers and a wave of contract cancellations. Meanwhile, Automattic has faced internal fallout, with 159 employees leaving the company amid the turmoil.
I think over the next few weeks, they're actually going to lose far more than 8% of their business. And so that's part of what they've said actually in their filings. That I think they had cancellations up 29%.
Behind the legal maneuvering lies a deeper question about the nature of the internet itself. WordPress was founded on the principle of democratizing web publishing, a lofty goal that has largely been realized. From bloggers to businesses, WordPress has enabled millions to stake their claim in the digital world. But as the platform has grown, so too has the concentration of power. The very thing that made WordPress a beacon of openness now risks becoming its Achilles heel. For Mullenweg, the stakes are personal. He was just 19 when he co-created WordPress in 2003, a fork of an earlier project called B2/Cafelog. At the time, he was an unknown coder from Houston, Texas, who saw the potential for a better way to build websites. Over the years, WordPress grew from a niche tool into a global phenomenon, with Mullenweg as its figurehead. Along the way, he launched Automattic to capitalize on the commercial opportunities surrounding the platform. Today, he is both a tech visionary and a polarizing figure, revered and reviled in equal measure.
When we started WordPress, many of the first 20 hires were people who I'd never met in person, but we'd already collaborated online, sometimes for years. I wanted to continue that as the company grew for one simple reason. I believe that talent and intelligence are equally distributed throughout the world, but opportunity is not.
The current dispute has exposed the fault lines within the WordPress community, forcing a reckoning with its values. Can a project built on collaboration survive when its leader takes an uncompromising stance? And what happens when the lines between open source and corporate interests blur? As the legal battle inches toward its first hearing in March, the WordPress ecosystem hangs in limbo. The outcome could redefine the relationship between WordPress.org, Automattic, and the countless companies that depend on the platform. For now, the community must grapple with the uncomfortable reality that the future of WordPress, and by extension the internet, rests in the hands of one man. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? The idea that nearly half the web's infrastructure could hinge on the decisions of a single individual. Whether you view Mullenweg as a protector or a provocateur, one thing is certain: the world is watching. And as the battle for WordPress unfolds, the stakes couldn't be higher, for the platform, for its users, and for the open source ethos itself.